Are you planning to take up photography as a hobby? That's why you're looking for your very first digital camera? I know it can be intimidating with all the models, brands, specs available in the market. So before you click that buy now button or swipe your card at the store, ask yourself first what kind of photography you want to do. A landscape photographer will need a different set of lens and camera body compared to a wildlife photographer or even to a food photographer. Basically, you will need a camera body and a lens. When you shop online or you go to any camera store, you will usually find a lens bundled with a camera body. This is common among low-end or entry-level cameras. For more expensive camera models, you have the option to buy the camera body only. When selecting camera bodies, there are two types. One is the digital single lens reflex and the other one is the mirrorless. This one has a mirror inside and this one has no mirror. That's why it's called mirrorless. So which one to get? If you love traveling and you hate carrying heavy bulky cameras, then the mirrorless is the ideal one for you. If you love photographing action, sports, then I would recommend mirrorless cameras because they have higher frames per second compared to DSLR cameras. Please get a mirrorless camera body that has an electronic viewfinder because there are mirrorless camera models that don't have an electronic viewfinder. So how do you compose your shots? You look through the back LCD. Quite inconvenient to use when you're shooting outdoors at daytime. It's just like shooting with your mobile phone. It's hard to see what's on the screen. The only issue with mirrorless cameras is that relatively, as of now, the amount of accessories and lenses available for them is limited compared to DSLR cameras. And of course, they are relatively more pricey compared to DSLR cameras. There are plenty of lenses and accessories still available for DSLR as well as the support. However, take note, the mirrorless is catching up. Another advantage of DSLRs is that they are relatively cheaper compared to mirrorless cameras. They are more comfortable and convenient to hold ergonomically because of their form compared to mirrorless cameras. However, they are more heavy, and because they are bulky, you will need a bigger bag for this. Because of their design, they consume relatively less power compared to a mirrorless camera. Now, whether you're going for a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, you still have to ask yourself if you're going to invest on a full frame camera body or a crop frame camera body. Well, we're talking about the sensor, the digital film in the camera. Well, a full frame sensor has a dimension of 24 by 36 millimeter. That's basically the same image size on a 35 millimeter negative, whereas an APS-C sensor is approximately half of that. Now, does it matter? Well, as far as price is concerned, full frame cameras are more expensive compared to crop sensor cameras. A full frame sensor camera will give you cleaner, more quality, more dynamic range images compared to a crop sensor. Make no mistake, a crop sensor output can be just as good as a full frame, especially if you don't make big prints. So if you're going to ask me which one I would recommend, I would go for a full frame sensor. Another thing to consider is the resolution of the camera. Especially when you go to a camera store, the salesperson might push to you a camera that produces say 36 megapixels or 45 megapixels. Honestly, you don't need that. But of course, if you love printing big outputs or enlargements, then the more megapixel count, of course, the better the output will be. Take note, the higher the megapixel count, the more expensive the camera is. So around a 20 to 24 megapixel camera will be just right for you and will cover all your future printing needs. Another feature that might be of great use for you in your photography is the ISO range. The higher the maximum ISO that your camera has, the easier for you to shoot in low light, indoors, and even outdoors, like when you're doing street photography or sports photography. Well, if you are doing landscape or portraits, well, this may not matter much. Of course, when you buy an entry-level camera, it comes with the kit lens already, so you have no choice but to use that lens. So if you need a particular lens for the kind of photography you do, you'll have to shell out extra to get that lens. Now, in higher model camera bodies, you have the option to buy the camera body only. You select a kind of lens that you want for the kind of photography that you do. So if you're going to buy a lens, there are two types. We have the prime and we have the zoom lens. Prime lens has one focal length. Zoom lens has variable focal length, meaning when you vary the focal length, you can change the view from wide angle to close up without changing the lens, without removing the lens from the camera body. If you want a wide angle, and this is not a wide angle, you will have to remove this and attach another lens that is of a wide angle. Or if you want a more close-up view, you will have to remove this lens from the body and attach a lens that gives you a more close-up view. If you want a wider view, you will have to walk back away from your subject with the prime lens. And if you want a tighter view, you will have to walk closer to the subject. But the nice thing about prime lenses is that it has relatively bigger maximum opening. And you will see that in this set of numbers, 1:2.8 or 1:2.8. The lower the number, the bigger the opening. Like there are lenses that can go as big as 1:1.4 and 1.2. And that means it's easier to work in low light and it's easier to produce portraits wherein the subject is sharp and the background totally blurred. Whereas with zoom lenses, the biggest opening is usually up to 2.8 only. You won't be able to achieve the same creamy, blurry background compared to, let's say, a 1.8 or a 1.4. So I hope those tips and guidelines will help you in deciding the best camera for the kind of photography that you do. So please click like and subscribe into my YouTube channel and stay tuned for more tips in the future.